me, Bastich B for 64K, and welcome to vlog number 35. This is September 2021.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastich B.
And welcome back. So this is going to be one of these big old Q&A sessions. I haven't done one of these episodes in a long time, since March of this year, so it's been quite a while. I've given you guys the opportunity to ask questions of the channel and myself, and I'm going to be taking questions from Patreon, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Those are all the questions came in on all my social media, so thank you very much for everybody that participated. Every question will be answered now. I'll try and do it rapid fire style, but also give you, a little bit of meat to the bone, so I'm not just giving you one word answers, and I appreciate it, everybody that took part. Also, at the end of the video, I'll give you a little bit of an update on the channel as well, just to keep you up to date on what's happening with videos and stuff. So let's get this thing going. So let's first jump over to the Patreon questions. I got 4 here to go through. If you're also interested in joining the Patreon for 64K, please check it out. For as little as $2 a month, you'll get videos, a little bit beforehand, and also a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. Nothing dramatic, but it all helps the channel. That light you can see behind you there, that actually was bought with Patreon money. I would never have been able to afford that, but I accumulated it over months, and I got that cool light, which has been essential in making videos. So thank you everybody that's on the Patreon that helped out with that. So let's go to the first one, and this one is from Ichiro, and he asks, what is your opinion on the Amiga 500 Mini? So for me, anything that introduces like a new generation or a new bunch of people to an older system, like the C64 Mini did, is excellent in my book. Yeah, I know a whole lot of people hate the idea of an Amiga Mini purist because it's, it's like a mutation of what you love. I don't see it that way. Obviously, it's better to use original hardware for anything. That goes without saying, obviously. But, it's still kind of cool that they, bringing this back. If it wasn't for the C64 Mini itself, this channel wouldn't even exist. It wouldn't have started, because I used that like crazy amount when I first started this channel. It was my only way to capture footage at the time and just, play old C64 games through HDMI, just simple stuff like that. So I owe like retro games a debt of gratitude for the C64 Mini. I was a backer of that, which was a few years earlier, so I did help them also, but it was great. So this Amiga 500 Mini, obviously I would want to get the maxi version of it with a working keyboard, because anybody that knows Amiga or C64 games, there's a lot of keyboard stuff that you're going to need to do, and I can just see a million games having issues with that kind of thing. And I know, like the C64 Mini, you can plug a keyboard into it, so it essentially solves that problem, but it's still a bit of a Frankenstein thing. You've got this Mini and then you've got a keyboard, and it's still not ideal, but I understand the concept of them needing to sell enough of these to justify making the maxi version. That's the version I'm interested in. I haven't ordered an Amiga 500 Mini yet. Thinking about it, and I don't really have the money to do that right now, just like always, so I haven't ordered one. I do want one. How much I'll actually use that is questionable. That's the reason why, do I really need to get it or not, or should I just wait? Amiga emulation and getting Amiga stuff to work on my channel has always been an issue for me. That's why I haven't covered the system a lot, and it's always been kind of hard to get everything working properly and to the quality that I want to see it anyway. But I still think this Mini thing is still a cool idea, and anybody that just trashes it is, it's just unjustified. If you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to buy it. It doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. And the next question is from Craig Marshall, and he asks, what's your tip there for when you fire up a C64 random game on a disc and you give it a whirl for about 5 minutes and go, this is crap? How do you get past giving it that extra time? Okay, so this used to be an issue for me back in the day a lot, not so much now because of the internet, and I'll explain what I mean. So back in the day, we used to get a lot of bootleg games from like Dodgy Dave. So, and the games never used to come with instructions, so you used to get this disc and it had a whole bunch of games, and you would load one up and you would start playing it, and you wouldn't really know what some of them you just didn't know what you were supposed to be doing, like what was the goal here, and there was nothing explained. This is an issue with old 8-bit games and even like 16-bit games, some of them, but mainly 8-bit games this is a bit of an issue with. And so you kind of like were just like, oh, this is terrible, and you just turned it off, and maybe it was terrible but maybe it wasn't. So my suggestion for you is, if you load up one of those games and you start it and it's a game that lots of people love, and you start and you're like, this is garbage, I don't know what's going on here, why do people like this, and you turn it off, before you do that you should probably, because of the internet, we've got the opportunity to do this now, you should go on the internet and check if you can find like a PDF or a download of the actual instruction manual for the game. Trust me, it can clear up a whole lot of things. 8-bit games were notorious for giving you a lot of information in the instruction manual. You might find out that a game like, on your Commodore 64 needed some sort of a keyboard, like maybe you pressed 1 or 2 to change weapons. You didn't even know that you could do that in that game. There's random stuff like that, and or like what are you actually supposed to be doing? The instruction manual will explain that. Oh, I'm supposed to be capturing these things, not shooting them. Things become a lot more clearer. Then you go back and play this game and you're like, okay, this is actually pretty cool, I understand how to play it. So, don't give up on a game immediately. I know it's very easy, especially if you have emulated stuff. You just keep on going through them and you don't give anything a chance. You can do that, but you're not going to really find out anything you're not going to find anything like meaty about a game. Yeah, so just simply stop for a second and check out if you can find an instruction manual. You might find the game a hell of a lot more enjoyable. And the next question is from Mark McGrumpy, and he asks, have you tried the Cloanto C64 Forever and Amiga Forever products before? They're amazing emulation environments for the C64 and Amiga. They also allow you to easily load up different versions of the OS, and he left a bunch of links there. Yeah, so I've heard about this and I've seen this website. I've never really looked into it, honestly, so I can't really say anything about it. I've never used it, and it looks pretty cool. It's been up for ages. I remember seeing that many years ago. I have used their site once though. I downloaded some Amiga drivers, I would say probably about a year ago, because I needed it to activate something on my RetroPie for some Amiga emulation, which turned out to not work very well. The usual story with Amiga stuff. But anyway, so I have used used their site before, but I've never actually used the emulation stuff, C64 or Amiga. I don't know whether it's good. If anybody knows more information about it, I don't actually even know what it is. I'm assuming it's just emulation, like a different form of emulation, like VAS. I didn't have time to really look into it because I've been pretty busy, so I look forward, if anybody knows exactly what this is and exactly how it works, if it's just like a, is it just an emulation thing, you download it into your computer. I've noticed that you can buy discs and that with the whole program on there. That's pretty retro, and I remember that also from looking at the site many years ago, but I didn't know what it was exactly when I looked at it. But yeah, I can't really say anything about this product. And the last question from Patreon is from Jay Jershin, and he asks, why were some developers able to make C64 games like Iridium, as an example, which look so crisp and clean graphics wise, where other games, especially ports, are a pixelated mess? Was there some trick they were using when creating those titles? And this is a pretty interesting question because, there's a lot of answers you could put here. So I think when it comes down to C64 games, some have these beautiful graphics and other ones just a big pixelated mess or just horrible. It comes down to a whole multitude of factors. I don't think there's really one thing. Number one is how much time did these programmers get to make this game? That was often the case back then. They were just cracking these out quickly. They didn't get a lot of time to work on these things. Number two, how skilled is the programmer? Are they good at making C64 games had they never made one. That would obviously factor into the graphics style and what it looks like, and their basic knowledge of programming. A perfect example of this is Ikari Warriors. There's two different versions of that on the Commodore 64. There's a European version and there's the US version. Bear in mind, it's based on the same arcade game, but if you turn both of those on your C64, you'll be horrified at the massive differences in both games. Just graphics wise, sound wise, completely different. It's almost like it's made on a different system. That's how drastic the Commodore 64 not only graphics but sound can be used. A lot of other systems, are a lot more limited. Like when you see a Spectrum game, it's a Spectrum game, it's got that very distinctive look, it's got that nice horrible sound, so it's a Spectrum game generally speaking. When you see a C64 game though, you can get the high-res looking game, you can get real pixelated mess, you can get blocky stuff, you can get really defined graphics, you can get a mixture of both. It's really like the look of the C64 and the sound of the C64 can be drastically different. So that Ikari Warriors example, the graphics and the sound on the US version are absolutely abysmal, and so is the gameplay. And then the UK version, the European one, is excellent. It represents the arcade extremely well. Excellent graphics and sound and playability. Like, this is based on the same game, and these games were made almost at the same time. It doesn't make any sense, right? So I think it comes down to a lot of it to the programmers and their knowledge, how much time they had to work on it, and also whether they actually cared about making a game. Bear in mind, a lot of these games were cracked out really quickly, and people were just in it for the money, and companies were just churning these out. They just needed people that would sit in a seat and program a game and ship it out. So, that's why there's such a vast variety and ups and downs on Commodore 64 games. It all just comes down to that kind of thing. Okay, so now we're going to check out YouTube for another 4 questions. The first one up is from Digital Evolution. The C64 was my computer growing up. Ultima 4, in my opinion, was the best gaming experience on the system. My question is there a similar RPG, new or old, released on the C64 that I should find and play? So this is a pretty interesting question, and yes, Ultima 4 is excellent. I totally agree with you. Now, I've actually done a massive video on C64 RPGs, so I'm assuming you haven't seen this. It's this one here. Please go check that out. It has tons of information about my personal favorite Commodore 64 RPGs. Bear in mind, it's just a small drop in the ocean of RPGs on the C64. Now, it would be interesting to know, maybe you can leave a comment later, whereabout in the world you are located, because that would depend on how many RPGs you were exposed to, especially on the C64. Just from my experience and gaming for so long at this point on the C64, I've noticed massive differences in gaming, gaming habits, or just games that were more exposed in different regions in the world. Generally speaking, if you were living in Europe or England or countries like that, in that sort of the part of the world, the C64 was a little bit more arcade-centric when it came to games. That's just a fact. That's the scene that I grew up on. Finding RPGs was a little bit more difficult. You had to really look and dig deep. If you lived in the US, however, strategy games and RPGs were a lot more common. That was more the thing. I guess computers were just seen as being more about strategy and RPGs, which totally makes sense. So the scene was much more like that and much less arcadey kind of games. Obviously both regions had both, that goes without saying, obviously. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to know whereabout in the world you come from, because if Ultima 4 was the only one you really played, there's a massive amount out there and some really great stuff. So just please check out that video. And I'll definitely be covering more RPGs in the future on the C64. There are a few in the works at the moment, and they should be coming out pretty soon this year, hopefully. And I'll be covering them on the channel, so look out for those. And the next one is from Big Toxic. He says, between what hours do you film and edit your videos? Also, did you track down the Roland brothers for an interview? Okay, so when it comes to editing and shooting videos, okay, so shooting videos happens at any time when I get a little bit of time. So for example, this vlog is being shot right now. This is Sunday lunchtime. The morning was out of the question, later on is out of the question. It's happening right now. Generally speaking though, I shoot videos either very early in the morning before anybody is woken up, so I have to get up super early, or I shoot them really late at night when everybody's asleep. So that's the times where I can, just get to do this without being interrupted. Secondly, editing. Editing's a real issue, especially right now. I'm just finding less and less time to do it, and it requires a lot of time. My 12-hour work shifts don't help that very much at all. But anyway, so editing usually takes place after 9 o'clock at night, and that's pretty much every day of the week. I will do some sort of editing. Even if it's something small, like for 20 minutes or half an hour, which doesn't get a lot done, but maybe I can set something up. I do editing every day, but editing requires a lot of time. If anybody's an editor or does editing a lot, especially my videos, I know there's, you can say you've edited a long play, but have you really edited a long play? It's basically one shot. You know what I mean? So people say they edit things, but when you do a vlog, even this vlog, most people's vlogs are just one shot, and they just press record, and then after it they just upload it, and then they say they consider themselves an editor. It's not really editing really, so let's not kid ourselves. But even this video that I'm doing now is a lot of editing in here, because I'm using one camera, but I'm pretending it's like I've got two cameras, the usual, just trying to make some sort of production value out of a video. I try to make the videos at least seem like there's some production values. You can be really lazy and just do one shot, that's fine. You can do whatever you want, but that's what I try to do. So I only get to edit really late at night, which definitely, I'm pretty fatigued by the time I'm editing, and my creative juices are toast at that point, but I try to put as much effort as I can still into the video, and I have to edit these things really quickly. I wish I had more time to spend on them, but I don't, so I have to edit it super quickly. So that's pretty much why I've stuck to the same editing program for a good number of years now. I know it so well that I can work on it very quickly. But I'll talk a little bit more about that just now, because there's a question about that. And as for the second part of your question, the Roland brothers, have I tracked them down? That's an interesting question. I'm a co-host on a podcast called Hands on Gaming. If you guys haven't listened to that, please go listen to it. I also do video versions of it a few weeks later. There should be one coming out pretty soon, within the next week or so. A video version, if that's the preferred way you want to watch it or listen to it. Anyway, so my partner Darren, Daz, he managed to organize one of the Roland brothers, John, and another guy called Andy Roberts for an episode, which we were supposed to record yesterday. But just because of scheduling conflicts, when there's 4 different people that live in different parts of the world, getting everybody to sync up to record something for like an hour and a half, it's pretty difficult. And basically it fell through, so we couldn't get that done just because of scheduling, not because of anything else. Everybody still wants to do it. So it still might happen a little bit later, we're hoping. We did record another episode yesterday regardless. We had to change things up. There's also the issue of me and Daz have to know, at least we have to lock in a date for recording something, and we had to, so we can work on whatever we're working on. If we're reviewing games, we have to review a whole bunch of games. We have to know what we're on. So we have to know, a few weeks ahead of time that is the actual date, and we couldn't get that, locked in, so we had to just fall back onto something else so we know what we're actually going to be talking about. But hopefully we can still get that going, and I think it'll make a pretty cool episode. And the next one is from Spellmaster. He asks, have you considered a survey of the state of gaming on a Commodore Plus 4? It had a super fast CPU, but fell a bit short on the graphics and sound capabilities. A very capable machine anyhow. And for the C64 Plus 4, so I've never even used one of those systems before. That's how obscure that system is for me anyway, and I think it's pretty obscure for most people. The question is, would I cover it and, like show games or something? I would have to honestly just be definitely no. The simple reason is that, I'm really working in a niche audience when it comes to the Commodore 64. There's a lot of people that love this system, and but still it's a lot more niche than if I had to just say cover Nintendo. I would probably have a lot more subs. I would probably be like over 20,000 at this point if I was just covering Nintendo, because everybody knows that, but I'm covering something a little bit more niche. And to go from that to a Commodore Plus 4, even just to cover it, honestly, if I had to do a video on like Commodore Plus 4 games or anything, the amount of people that are going to watch it is going to be so low that it's not even going to make it worth it for me to make it, because obviously I want people to watch it, and there's going to be so few people that's going to actually watch that video that it's almost going to be pointless. You make videos so people can watch them and enjoy them, and when there's only like a handful of people watching, then what's really the point? I've spent hours and hours making something for almost nothing, so I won't be covering a Commodore Plus 4 at any point. It's just too obscure. And the last question here from YouTube is from Mark McRae, and he asks, how is the arcade history video progressing? Yeah, so I can say it's progressing. That's what I can say. So I'll answer this question fully at the end of the video, so just hang on there, Mark, and you'll get your answer. It's just part of the wrap up. It's part of the what's happening with the channel, so I'll give you a little bit more detail at the end for that, but I will answer your question. And now we're going to go over to Twitter for 2 more questions. The first one up is from Andrew Parry. He asks, will you be getting the Amiga 500 Mini, and if so, will we see more Amiga content from you in the future? And so I've answered this question a little bit before. So will I be getting the Amiga 500 Mini? Probably. I'm not 100% sure yet. I just have to see how things work out. I've explained that all already in a previous question, but as far as more Amiga content goes, I promise you, as soon as I've got like a good way of really representing Amiga stuff and recording it and actually playing it, that's the biggest issue, because a lot of Amiga stuff, you use a mouse and you use a controller. Some of them are mouse only, some are controller only, some are combination. There's a whole lot of issues that go into emulating Amiga, which you have to get everything right for it to work, and I just don't feel like I've ever found anything that 100% does that to my liking, where I can just turn on a system or whatever, a program, and just play the Amiga game and just start getting footage and enjoying it. I've always got to tinker around with everything to try to get it to work, and the problem comes into the fact that if, for example, say I haven't played a certain Amiga game before and I load it up, I don't know 100% if it's working exactly the way it should be working, because I never played that game back in the day. Is the music supposed to be this fast? Is it supposed to be this slow? Is it chugging because it's emulation, or is this the way the game originally played? On the C64 and some other systems that I played a lot back in the day, as soon as I turn something on through emulation, I can tell immediately what is wrong because I played the originals. Amiga stuff, I didn't have an Amiga when it originally came out. I only got it a few years later, so I was never exposed to a huge amount of Amiga games initially. I've played Amiga games through emulation a lot over the last 20 years or so, I've played a lot of Amiga games, but not enough to be able to tell you if something is working 100% the way it should be, at least for the games I haven't played. And so that's kind of an issue, but as soon as I've got all that sorted out, Amiga stuff will be on the channel, and I really look forward to covering it. And the next question up is from Judge Drock, aka Mark Hallowell, and he asks, who are your top fave classic heroes of yesteryear? They could be game programmers, coders, musicians, artists, writers, editors of classic magazines, record breakers, inventors, anything. And have you tried to contact them on social media? So this question is a doozy. It is like, where do I even start? I'm not going to rattle off everything, but I'll just mention a few things briefly. So as far as classic gaming programmers, musicians, writers, everything, I'll just rattle off a few of my favorites just quickly. So for musicians, obviously Rob Hubbard is a big influence. I love his music, but for me personally, I think Jerome Tell was the Sid master, at least from my opinion. You know, there were so many good Commodore 64 musicians. It's really hard to pinpoint them down, but Jerome Tell will have to be my personal favorite. As far as programmers and artists and all that goes, I really love the duo of John Twitty and Hugh Riley. All their stuff they did for System 3, the stuff they did by themselves, and even the stuff they did for Vivid Image. All just such top quality stuff on the C64. I just absolutely loved it. So those guys got massive respect from me. Also the Roland brothers, all their C64 stuff, amazing as far as sound and graphics and playability go. They just like the Hugh Riley Twitty combo. They just knew how to make games on the C64 just to perfection. And as far as writers go, you know, I'm going to obviously mention a very obvious one that a lot of you guys probably know and you probably grew up with, especially if you read Zap 64 or just lived in the 80s in that UK gaming scene. Obviously Julian Rignall was a big influence on the stuff I used to read, and I really used to enjoy reading his stuff. And also he looked like a really cool guy, you know, in the magazines. He always had this big mohawk, kind of crazy hair. And he looked like he was always playing arcade games. You saw pictures of him playing arcade games and so many issues of Zap, and it was always like something cool, like he was playing R-Top and he was like, that guy's cool. So it was like a combination of the guy was doing this work, you know, his job was reviewing games, and you were just like, how do you get this job? This is like the best thing in the world. And you see, he looked super cool. Going back though and reading like Zap 64 now, and some of those reviews, you know, a lot of them hold up really well, but there's some that I completely disagree with now. It's just like they were so harsh on so many games, like really harsh for no reason. But it's still cool, you know, like that's just an opinion. People have opinions, and you know, it doesn't mean it's right, it doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just whatever you like. So but yeah, I really liked his stuff, and there were a bunch of others, but this Commodore 64 scene is so massive, you know, as far as like cracking services and kind of the scene stuff. I really used to like Hotline. That was one of the crackers that used to crack games back then. I used to see their logo so often, Hotline. I saw it so often that on one of their scrollers, or whatever you want to call them, they had an address for the Netherlands, I believe it was. It's been so long. I think that's where they were situated, and it gave an actual address you could write to them. So, and they said you could get a list of games, and I was just like, what? So I actually sent them a letter. I sent Hotline a letter in the 80s, and I actually got a reply. Bear in mind, I lived in South Africa, which is amazing. Went all the way to the Netherlands. Got a reply about a month later, or 2 months later, and the dudes from Hotline, they sent me a massive list of Commodore 64 games, and it had a price listing, and it was super cheap, even for back then. And basically, I convinced my dad to give me like $50, and I chose a whole bunch of games off their Hotline list, their cracked list, and we put like $50 in an envelope. This would never happen now, it'll just be stolen. And we sent it to the Netherlands, and probably about 3 months later, I actually got a package back with a whole bunch of discs, Commodore 64 discs, just jacked up with games, all the ones I'd marked off that I wanted. It was completely amazing. I couldn't believe that actually worked. And I did that another 3 or 4 times during my Commodore 64 cycle. Bear in mind it took about 3 or 4 months to go there and back. So yeah, I used to get like probably 2 packages from Hotline every year for like a good couple of years. It was amazing, and that's just crazy. I still don't even know how that all happened, but that was fun. And the Commodore 64 scene is just super cool, old and new. And I almost forgot to mention, have I actually contacted any of these people, for interviews and that? Generally speaking, no. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like my channel's not worthy of talking to these people that made stuff that I love so much. I put them on a pedestal, so I feel kind of embarrassed to even like ask them to do an interview on that. Having said that, I've done a lot of interviews for newer C64 games and people that are involved with it. I just feel like, they're more on my ground because they're making games now on the C64, so I don't feel like I'm talking to a legend. Having said that, I'm not saying you're not making great games and you're not legendary. Of course not. Anybody that makes a game that is awesome is a legend as far as I'm concerned. It's so difficult. But as far as the other ones, it's hard, I just don't know. I have reached out and I have got a few interviews before on a bunch of people from back in the day, and they're on my channel. I've done quite a few interviews at this point, which is pretty cool. But generally speaking, no, because I just feel like, I feel like my channel is not really worthy of their excellence, basically. Okay, so let's go over to Facebook for the final 2 questions, although one of them is a 3-parter, so let's get into that. The first one up is from John Ebbs, and he asks, here is one for you. I was a Commodore user reader, so was I. Absolutely love that. Once the C64 died, it became an Amiga only mag, I remember that, and ran until 1998. I honestly wasn't aware it ran until then. Do you think Zap made a mistake by not doing the same? So I was also a big Commodore user fan, and that was my favorite magazine, so I used to read that one all the time. And I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, it just got more and more Amiga content, and then it just became an Amiga magazine. I remember that distinctly. That's kind of the time I stopped buying it because I didn't have an Amiga at the time, so it was pointless. I couldn't play any of the games, even though I looked at them all the time and I drooled over them because I wanted them so badly. But as far as, Zap, should it have become an Amiga magazine later on? I don't really know, because it's kind of hard to say, because there's a multitude of factors, just like other things. Newsfield, the guys that published Zap, went out of business and in the early 90s. I think it was 1993, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I remember, but around that time they went out of business, so Zap didn't exist anyway. That was the end of it, so it couldn't have really continued on into the late 90s or whatever as just an Amiga magazine, just because it didn't exist anymore. But if theoretically, if they decided to, continue Zap on as an Amiga magazine, I think they could have done that. There was a lot of Amiga content near the end of Zap's main lifestyle, main life cycle. There was a lot of kind of Amiga stuff in there anyway, so it could have easily just become an Amiga magazine. But there were a lot of Amiga magazines out at that time, so would it have even been practical? I don't know. I just it's such an open-ended question. As far as I'm concerned, there was no reason to do that. Zap 64 had its day in its original form, and it was excellent, and there were plenty of other Amiga magazines out at that time that were covering the scene anyway, so I just don't see any point in them having to carry it on as an Amiga magazine. And the next question is from Denny Haynes. He asks, he's got a triple threat of questions. So he said, awesome, been waiting for this, hope you don't mind more than one question, no problem. So number 1, he asks, not long ago I got into video making myself. I'd love to know what software you use to make your videos. I currently use Filmora, Canva, and a multitude of websites for information and graphics. Love the lady robotic voice that introduces some of your videos. The second question is, I noticed that with all your content variety in your videos, there are no long plays. Any reason for that? Yes. And number 3 is, do you think with the current surge in content for Spectrum, C64 and Amiga by smaller publishers, there's a chance that a major software label house might get into the act? And he finishes it off with, looking forward to your arcade documentary. Cheers. Okay, so the program that I use for editing is called VideoPad. There it is there. It's made by NCH Software. I believe they're an Australian company. I could be completely wrong on that. I think I saw that somewhere, or maybe I just dreamt it up one night in some sort of mad fever dream. I'm not really sure, but anyway, they make it, NCH Software, and it's a pretty cheap video editing program. I'm not gonna try and pump it up or anything. It is cheap, and that's why I got it, and I've been using it for the entire time I've been making this YouTube channel, and it's freaking excellent. And you know, it has its issues. It updates itself probably once a week almost, and when you're editing and it needs an update, everything just goes all to hell while you're editing and you get really frustrated. The first thing you got to do is just go and update it, and then it works perfectly again. So it does that, but besides that little niggle, it's not really a big deal. This program works very well. It's extremely versatile. It does everything I want. There's no restrictions for me as a creator with this program, which is pretty amazing. My programs are editing intensive, so if this thing can handle my stuff, it should be able to handle most people's videos quite easily, like a breeze actually. Because I just layer these videos with editing, different layers, multiple audio layers, just everything. So if this thing can handle it, and then it's pretty impressive. It's very versatile, like I said. So if you want something that's very cheap, and it's also very easy to use, even like doing some of the effects and that, you can also manipulate this program, which I really like. I don't think there's a lot of options in here on how you do things that I don't think the original developers kind of had in mind, but I figured out ways around certain things to do certain effects and certain just techniques that this program probably wasn't meant to do, and that shows you how versatile it is. So I would highly recommend this. I used to, when I originally was doing video editing before that, you know, making like movies and stuff like that, I used to use Adobe Premiere, which was super expensive, and I spent a lot of money on that program, and honestly I hated it. I don't know what it's like now. Adobe could be the best program in the world. It was the best program in the world when I used it, supposedly, but it was the most painful program I've ever used. It's definitely for professionals, and I knew a lot about video editing, and even I struggled with it. So I wouldn't suggest going for something high-end like that. You're gonna really be annoyed, and it's probably gonna put you off, and you're not gonna want to edit anything. So I would never buy something like that for video editing. There's so many options out there now, it's so easy, but this is just the one I use and I like it. And question 2 was the long play video. Yeah, I don't have long play videos on my channel. The reason is that I'm not really interested in doing long play videos. That's just the reality of it. I don't watch long play videos myself personally. I kind of find it boring. That's just my opinion. And I'm not doing any disrespect to anybody that does long play videos. I think the ones where a person practices on a game and gets it down to a T, and then they do a run through of it without hardly losing any lives, and that to me is a long play, and those are really good, and I applaud you. I could never make something like that. There's a handful of games that I'm really good at that I could probably do that and do a long play on. But do I really want to do it? No, because it's not it's not creative enough for me, I guess. You know, I like to make a story and make something, add some sort of history to gaming. A long play is kind of adding to history, but she's showing a whole game. I get that. It's totally cool. I just like to do it in a different kind of way. So that's why I'm not really interested in doing long plays. And as far as the big labels getting in on making games for like the Spectrum, C64 and Amiga now, I don't think that will ever happen, simply based on the fact that big companies, the reason they exist and they're big is to make money, and making games for the C64, Spectrum and Amiga right now is not going to make them mad money. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to be even like a drop in the ocean as compared to whatever other big title they've got on the line. Some $50 million game, this Amiga game, whatever that somebody's proposing, they're not even going to look at it. It's unfortunate, but I think that's the reality of it. I don't know, it could be proven wrong. That's just my opinion. But it would be nice to see like some big company take on like a C64 game right now. It would be really interesting. I don't even know how they would go about it, because you know they would have unlimited funds. So would they work on it for a year, or would they, you know, how would they even go about it? What would the process be? You know, how long would they spend on it? It's pretty interesting though. I would like to see it, but in reality, it's all about money when it comes to the big publishers. And if there's not a massive amount of money, or at least enough money to justify their production costs, they're not going to do it. So I don't think we'll ever see that. Okay, so I've moved to somewhere a little bit more comfortable. This is where I'm just going to give you a quick update on the channel. As of right now, I have got no stock of videos. I usually have a full month's worth of extra videos set aside, so I'm usually a month ahead. I've got 0 now because I decided to do the arcade video and try to finish that and concentrate on that 100%. I'll explain about that right now anyway, but I've got no stock of videos, so basically I'm just making videos and they will just be released. So the schedule is going to be a bit wonky for quite a while until I make enough to catch up again and then be ahead. Once I'm ahead by a long shot, then I can just relax a little bit, but right now I'm just trying to do a whole lot of videos. I am working on a bunch of videos at one time, at least 4 or 5 right now, and I'm chopping between them, you know, doing bits and pieces because that's the way I like to do it. And so there is a whole bunch currently being made. You know, you're going to see them out over the next few weeks, but you know, you just have to be a little bit patient while I catch up with videos, but there's a lot being made, so never fear. So like I said earlier, and some questions I got asked, the arcade video, the documentary I've been working on for months and months at this point, it's a little bit ridiculous. This will be the last time I'll be talking about it until it actually gets released. I will not mention this video ever again. I'm working on it. It's taking a lot of time. I don't even know how many games I'm covering in this video. It just seems like a million. I've covered hundreds of games in this video already. I'm over halfway, but it's still a long way to go in making this. And when I say I'm covering games, like arcade games, you know, I've watched a lot of arcade documentaries over the years, and every single one of them I've ever watched, I don't know if anybody knows of anyone, but anyway, every single one that I've watched, I've always been grossly disappointed with them, and that's the whole reason why I'm making this, because for the simple reason is they don't ever cover games properly. It's always like, oh, Outrun came out in 1986, it's a great racing game by Sega, and on to the next game. It's usually like games get like, you know, 10 seconds worth of time, and then they skip out a whole lot of things, and they usually skip out all your favorite stuff, and they seem to mention like some games and they just completely gloss over other things. It's always like that, and I've never been satisfied with an arcade video I've ever watched. There's probably one out there that I don't know about that I haven't watched. Let me know if you know of any, but generally speaking, you know, I've always been disappointed. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this documentary. And it doesn't mean that my documentary is going to be better than anything else. It could be way worse. Who the heck knows? I don't even know myself because it's so massive. But anyway, it's been made, and I'm kind of jumping back to it and chopping away at it and working on other videos. So it's not going to be out for any time soon. I did try to, at the beginning of this month, work on it completely to see if I could knock it out. And I gave it like 3 weeks full of solid just working on it, and I got a whole lot done. But the scope of it is so massive that I just realized I was never gonna be able to finish it, not even remotely. So I had to jump back to start making regular videos again, which I've been doing. And so that documentary will come out, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna love it. It's gonna be big, and when I say big, it's already 3 hours long on its cut so far, what I've edited. So it's probably gonna be, who knows, maybe 5 or 6 hours long, one video. So I know it's mental, but that's the way I want to do it, and that's the way it's going to be. So that will be out there in the future, and when it comes, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, so just look out for it. And I haven't really had the time to mention this before, but I do have a podcast. I'm a co-host for Hands On Gaming, which I mentioned earlier. Please check that out in its podcast form. It's me and Daz, former of Arcade Perfect podcast. We chat about Commodore 64 games. It's what everybody here is here for, essentially, anyway. And you know, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of guests. We've had a lot of guests in the last few episodes. There'll be guests in the future as well. You know, this is also about making connections with other people who I can maybe interview in future for actual videos for this channel. So there's a whole host of things that are going on. The podcast also comes out in a video form. I've already uploaded a bunch that I've made, you know, just to give you a different, if you don't listen to podcasts, you can watch the video form. The video form comes out long after the podcast, just bear that in mind. So if you want to listen to it now, you know, go check those out. We recorded an episode yesterday as of making this, so that one should be up maybe by the time this video comes out. It's on Batman the movie, you know, the C64 game by Ocean, and so check that one out. It's really fun. We also had a guest on that one, so that was cool. So please check it out. And one more final thing, I just want to thank everybody again who comments on a regular basis. A lot of the people that, you know, asked questions earlier are regular commenters. There were also people I've never seen before on there, which is cool. And I really appreciate it. Commenting always on any format, whether it's the social media or whatever, is obviously very cool. I'll always comment on everything, give you some feedback. But if you have the opportunity, please leave your comments on the YouTube channel. It actually helps the video dramatically, way more than if you post it on the social media. Social media doesn't really help the YouTube channel at all unless you share up the video. So just bear that in mind, but I'm not discouraging anybody from commenting on social media. Please go ahead, and if you have the opportunity and you like a video, please share it in whatever format you can. It really helps. It's really hard for me to I don't know, kind of promote videos at a certain point. I can only promote videos so much without becoming like, you know, a pain in certain areas, so I have to like try and balance it, and I can't promote certain things as much as I want to because I just don't want it to be like in people's faces all the time. So please, anybody out there who likes the channel, just, you know, share the videos. That's all. It helps out a lot. I'm trying to get to the 10,000 subscriber goal. I've gone over 7,100 as of making this, which is damn cool. I crossed the 7,000 just recently. I'm already 7,100. It's amazing. So keep on going, and maybe one day I'll be able to do this as a real job, and then I can actually put the time and effort and much more time into making videos to make them even more cooler and more dramatic, and spend actually more time crafting them. But you know, who knows whether that'll ever happen. That's the goal. That's what I'm trying to achieve. But anyway, thank you everybody again for commenting. And that's it. Thanks for joining me, Bastich B, at 64K. I hope you had a good time. And if you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.